Good morning. Welcome to worship. Welcome to worship. How can you not have some excitement after this amazing weather? We have Dave Emer to thank for that, because Dave Emer came back from Florida this week. And my plan is for all of the FFUMC folks that go to Florida, let's remind them to stagger their returns for the rest of the winter. Oh, gee, thanks, Rick. Okay, what's this?
It's the prayer clipboard.
The prayer clipboard. All right, okay. So thanks, Rick. I appreciate that. A little bit early, huh?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm a little bit ahead of myself.
All right. Well, thanks, Rick. I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
So welcome. If you've never been here before, at Children's Time, your children are welcome to come up and gather with us. They'll be going to what we call Children's Church, which is an age-appropriate chance for them to grow and learn as followers and lovers of God. Or if you're with us for the first time, your children are welcome to remain with us. There are actually little activity bags out there for them to use. We welcome those who are watching online. As always, my prayer has been throughout this week that God's Spirit may be as real where you are as we gather as community of faith here together. So glad you're with us, and we thank you for those who make the web ministry possible. I want to particularly thank this morning the Bosbury family who gave a gift in memory of Alan Martin, and an anonymous gift was given this week in honor of the choir. If you want to make a special gift towards the web ministry, which is our Facebook, which is our web page, which is our streaming, which is our Facebook restreaming during the week, there's a sign-up sheet right out there. The minimum suggestion is $15, but if the Holy Spirit says, I want to just be generous, then don't ever say no to the Holy Spirit. But we're so thankful for your generosity. Actually, I've got to tell you, I'm thankful for your generosity. We ended 2016, as I probably shared at the beginning of January, $153 to the black. Now, the thing about ministry is every month, you turn the page over again and you start over again. But I just wanted to thank you for opening your hearts, for demonstrating with your lives first, with your sacrifice second, with your treasure, that you are truly a community that looks to put your treasure for your harvest. And thank you so much for that. And I'm so proud to be a part of this journey for as long as God weaves us together. So thank you for all of that. So I want to just thank you. We're so glad you're with us today. And we're going to be moving into a time of... hi, Laura. How are you?
Before we get started, I just wanted to check and make sure I had the pronunciation correct on a couple of words in the scripture reading.
Okay, you want to do that now?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right. Okay.
So is this one Sanballat?
That sounds good to me. I think that's how I'm looking at it.
Okay, and is that Geshem?
Yes, Geshem. Yeah, I think you got that right.
Okay, good. I just want to do the best job that I absolutely can, and I'm looking forward to it. Oh. My goodness, I didn't realize we'd already started. Sorry.
It's okay.
I'm sorry about that. I was just so focused on getting this right,
I'm so glad. I'm so glad for that, because excellence really matters.
Sorry,
Thank you, Laura. So we do hope, as I was saying, that you do feel the sense of God's Spirit. And if you haven't figured it out yet, we're talking about distractions this morning. Because oftentimes, as we're moving into that phase of overcoming challenges, there are often distractions that enter into our lives that seek to undermine that movement, that sense of God's Spirit that we're a part of. And sometimes those distractions can keep us from the life that God offers to give us. So what pulls you back as you sense God's Spirit moving you ahead? Is it fear? Is it too many choices and opportunities? Is it criticism? Is it snow? So that's what I'm going to be reflecting on later, as we look at the book of Nehemiah for a last time in this series, and how he had distractions which sought to undermine his capacity to live into the dream that God had given him, the building of the walls to restore Jerusalem. What gets in your way? What keeps you from finding the abundant life that God leads before us? Because Nehemiah had a way, which we'll learn about later, of making sure the lesser things stayed lesser things and the more important things were the more important things. And so we end as we move into our worship with the 46th Psalm, who talks about God who in the middle of the shaking of the mountains, in the middle of seas that roar and form and change and all around us, and how the anxiety can come to all of us, God says in the middle of all of that, be still. Be still. And know that I am God. Well, we're finishing the series on Nehemiah. Now, we could tell a whole lot more about Nehemiah, but we're dealing with this overcoming challenges, and we all have them. And what do we learn from Nehemiah about overcoming the challenges in our lives? So I just want to kind of rehearse where we've been the last few weeks and then move to finalize it. Next week, we're going to talk about, as the bulletin says, how our words, what we say, really do matters. And I think if we watch the news enough in the last 3-4 years, however long, we can see how important words do matter. So we're going to reflect a little bit on this week before we move into Lent. And by the way, we have guests coming for Lent every Sunday. The first Sunday, Peter's coming. And then Simon of Cyrene, who was forced to carry the cross, is coming. And then down the line. So if you know someone to invite for the season of Lent to help us move towards Easter and the cross, this would be a great time to invite someone, a neighbor, a friend, a loved one, to worship and to hear the story in a first-hand personal way. So we've been talking about overcoming challenges, and just to remind you, Nehemiah worked for the king in Babylon, the king of the whole area, and he was a cupbearer, which means he was trusted enough that he was the one that carried the cup to the king or the food to the king. He was the one that tasted it ahead of time to make sure that it was safe. And so he was trusted by the king. And he had some friends that came from Jerusalem. The walls were torn down. They had no stability. They had no ground. They were just like sheep without a shepherd. And they told him about the walls, and the scripture said he grieved, and he cried, and he wept, and for 4 months he prayed. For 4 months he grieved. And we talked about when we overcome our challenges, that reminds us that the first thing we need to do when we overcome challenges is, like Nehemiah, allow our hearts to be broken by the dissonance we often feel between how we know God is calling us and the hope the promise we're called to, and the reality of our condition or the condition of our community or our country or our world. Allow our hearts to be broken. Because in that brokenness, in that 4 months, we called it, this is God's great crock pot. You know, this is where God begins to stir up a big hope inside of us. This dissonance between what we experience and what we long for. And in that waiting, in that prayer time, is where God begins to stew and brew in this great crock pot. God's big hope that doesn't shake us. You can do the next one too. Thank you. Waiting and praying is God's working. We talked about how success, we often confuse success as what happens after with the fruit is born, but actually we learned through Nehemiah's experience that success is not what happens at the end of the journey, it's what happens along the journey. It's the values, it's the orientation, it's the faithfulness, it's the resiliency that you develop along the way that helps you build character and faith and a future. It's those things you develop along the way. And last week we talked about these values, which are so important and critical to developing character. We talked last week about how in the life that we sometimes think position has influence. I'm a pastor, I certainly have influence. I'm a president, I have influence. But the reality, it's not position that has the most influence. Character is what really creates the most influence in your life and in my life. Our character has a greater influence. And last week we talked about some of these basic fundamental values that I invited you to write down or to put on your refrigerator or your mirror or wherever you have your prayer space and all of these vital important values. And I discovered looking at them this week that I bet you will rank them different than I will, and I will probably rank them differently next month than this month. Because as I seek to be shaped in the image of God and want these values to live through me, I discover that God is working on me on one more sometime than another time. So I want to kind of finalize where we are with Nehemiah and begin by saying this. There are many weeks when I gather in my office and you can go to the next slide now, Rich, thank you, unless people want to write those down. I go to my office and I set aside a couple hours, to do some work on planning, to do some work on my sermon. And inevitably, as I start getting about 45, 50 minutes done, all of a sudden I'm like, I wonder what's on Facebook now. I need a break. And instead of doing the healthy kind of breaks where you get up and walk around and maybe take 5 minutes to go do something that might need to be done in some other part of the building, I go, what's on Facebook? And so I start scrolling through my Facebook page, and inevitably I'll see an article or something I want to read, or a story about someone's life that I want to follow, and I start reading, and then I see another one, and I start reading, and before I know it, all these plans I had for that 2 hours of fruitfulness, 5 minutes becomes 15, and 15 becomes 25, and before I know it, I have been distracted from what I had planned to do. Any of you ever had that experience? Now, I'm not diagnosed with ADD, but there's some days, and we laugh, but I honor that there are people who do live with that reality. But there's some days when I find myself distracted, and maybe your life is like that. You're overcoming a challenge. You're getting some momentum. It's not as bad as it was. And every once in a while you sense, gee, God really is moving in my life. And I am seeing a little bit difference in my character. And it may be just a little step. It may be 2 steps forward and 1 step back. But you start to feel like something is really going on here. And then inevitably, like me in my study time, something begins to undermine or feel like it's drawing and pulling at that progression, that capacity to overcome our challenges. And Nehemiah dealt with them. I'll return to his story in just a minute. I think of 3 things that come to my mind this week as I think about the 3 things that undermine the distractions that when I start overcoming some challenges, they seek to draw me back. First is the opportunities. We are in a world of opportunities, aren't we? We can do everything. Well, many things. And so many things are available to us, but sometimes we choose the good opportunity and sacrifice the great calling in doing so. That may be like, I don't know, maybe, hey, let's go out Saturday night. Let's go out. Let's have some fun. And you're out till 1 or 2 in the morning, and maybe you struck up a romantic relationship with someone, and you're having a great time, and then there's that part of me that says, I really need to get up and worship tomorrow. Because I want to continue living out my love for God. But Saturday night, what a great opportunity. My friends invited me out, and then you end up sleeping in on Sunday morning. And the next week, the invitation comes again, and it's like, it's only 2 weeks in a row, and so you do it, no big deal. And then the 3rd week happens, and before you know it, the good opportunity has become a habit. And you miss something in that time. You miss something. You miss something. So sometimes we will choose the good opportunity instead of the great call of what God is doing inside of us. It could be relationally, it could be athletic opportunities, it could be financial opportunities, the things that we will choose, which are not bad choices, they're not bad things. But in moving in that direction, we sometimes sacrifice something greater. The other thing that often distracts me, and maybe you know this place, is criticism. You know, you hear the criticism and you got a little momentum going in your life, you know, you're overcoming. All of a sudden, you get some criticism and it kind of feels like it just pulls you right back to where you were. And sometimes that's what people intend to do. Family systems theory tells us that when we start to get healthier in our family systems, and we're not necessarily talking about our biological families, it could be friendship groups. You know, when we get healthier and we start making choices that are healthier, and maybe instead of staying out till 2, we'll stay out till 11 because we want to make sure that we're honoring God in the morning. However you make that choice, that oftentimes when we make choices towards being healthier, our friendship groups, our family groups will try to pull us back to where we were, because a natural desire for our human condition is we like things to stay balanced and in harmony. And when we disturb that balance, people work unconsciously to move it back to where it was. You know what I'm talking about? I bet many of us have experienced this. Some of us may be there. Some of us may be the ones pulling back. But criticism has this way of distracting us. And I know that when I'm doing great, I'm having a great week, and I hear criticism, you know, I sometimes focus on that criticism way more than the great week I may be having. And that's just probably my character and my nature. And when that happens, the other thing that we get caught up is fear, right? The uncertainty. We may be making headway, but boy, there's a way to go. And there's a part of us that looks back at what happens in the past, and guess what we do with it? We project it not just into the present, we project it into the future. Now think about that. We are projecting what's happened in the past into the future, and when we do that, we call that reality, right? We're afraid of that reality. It's really just a projection of some of our fears and uncertainties from our past or in the present, but we project it into our future, and we think that's what's going to happen. And so our present is full of uncertainty and fear because we imagine what might happen in the future. Now, let's face it, there might be a little bit of a track record, but if we're overcoming challenges and we're sensing the Spirit of God is moving, and it may be moving way too slow, but we know it's moving, and God's behind the scenes and we can't see how God is moving, but every once in a while we go, holy cow, this really speaks to me, this really touches me, this really reminds me that I'm overcoming. And all of a sudden the words of Scripture begin to speak to us, you know, that maybe I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. And we begin to claim the truth of Romans chapter 8, that nothing in life and death can ever separate me from the love of God. And then we let the imagination disturb our reality, the incarnation in our lives. Now, Nehemiah dealt with these situations in his life. Let's run it back to the Scripture, would you please, Rich? Well, that's what he did. Yeah, other way. Yeah. Forget it, Rich. My fault. I should have prepared it better for you. So what happened when they're almost getting the wall done, right? And the same people who criticized it earlier in this book, Nehemiah, they're working on the wall, and Sanballat and Tobiah and Geshem conspire to try to undermine the efforts of the people. It wasn't Nehemiah this time. It was the first time it was the people. They were threatening them. They were passing stories. They were telling them that they're going to be attacked and trying to undermine the efforts of the people. But Nehemiah did some very wise things and overcame that threat. And now they're almost done. And these people are about to lose all of their power. Nehemiah has so disturbed the balance in their system that they're going to find some way to disturb it and bring it back to where it was. And so one of the things they do is Sanballat sends out this document to tell people with a rumor, Nehemiah, he's really trying to be king, and when this gets back to the real king, you are in trouble, and blah, 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 blah. Now dig this. The Scripture says, It was an open letter. So back then, when you sent a letter or a document, you wrote it on the parchment paper, you rolled it up, you tied it up, and you put a wax or clay seal on it so that no one would see it but the person for whom it was intended. That's not what they did. It was an open letter. It wasn't tied, it wasn't sealed. It was written on and rolled up, and whoever got it opened it up and looked at it. It was like Facebook in that day and time, right? You know, throw a rumor out on Facebook, and long as, you know, you're my friend and my stuff will scroll on your screen, man, I can show whatever I want. Or any other social media where we do that. So you see what he's doing. He's trying to get the word out through Facebook of his day that Nehemiah is really trying to be king and spread this rumor. And of course Nehemiah sees this and he responds to it and says it's not true. And what does he do right after that? What did he do? He prayed. Now that's really important. And what did he pray? He said, "But now, O God, make me strong." Another way of saying, he says, "Now, O God, I'm going to trust you for my reputation. And I'm going to do what you have called me to do in a way that honors you." Now that's important because, you know, you get criticism, and what do you feel like you want to do with that criticism? Anybody? I know it's not your life. Pretend it's someone else's life that they criticize. What do you do with it?
Criticize back.
You want to criticize back. You want to defend yourself, right? You want to prove to people that their perception is wrong about you. Or something else you do when you get criticized. What do?
Curl up in a ball.
You curl up in a ball. You shut down. That's right. Because you're tender-hearted, maybe. And the other thing you do, I think some people get angry, don't they? In the midst of criticism, they get angry. And then they Facebook right back. Based on a rumor and an innuendo. But instead of letting it die off, man, we just stir it up and give it life. I see this on our national level right now. But he prays. He says, "God, basically, let my choices honor you. And I'm going to trust you for my reputation." When was the last time you prayed that? I'm going to trust you for my reputation. So the thing about praying is, remember, it's when you pray, you're not focusing on the mountain, right? You're focusing on the God who moves mountains. And I'm not saying that's easy. I'm not saying you may have to swallow some pride. But it's moving the conversation to a different place. Now the second thing he'd do, although it wasn't in there, I threw this in there because this comes out of my life. Rich, the next one, thank you. Is if you want to be an overcomer in the midst of criticism, in the midst of distractions, in the midst of things would you find a community in Christ? A community of faith. Not because we're better and we have all the answers, but because I've discovered when I gather with my small group, something happens. Sometimes we'll study the scriptures. You know, we're working through Acts right now in our small group, and I come home going, wow, that was a cool insight that kind of helped me refocus on. But other times, I don't get anything out of our scripture, but my soul is encouraged. And I leave those small groups for 2 or 3 days. This feeling is, I'm more God-defined now than everything else defined that can so easily define us. And that's one way of inviting you to consider a small group. To come talk to me. But there's something even about gathering in worship which is uplifting. Which sometimes, I've been on both sides. I've been a preacher and I've been in the pews when I wasn't in ministry. And some of the lowest points of my life, I sat in a pew and I was just grateful for being in a space of grace where I could work through my problems without anybody prying except out of love. And allowing this healing grace of God to move in my life. There's something about the Holy Spirit's work and gathered community that works. And I get it. It doesn't just happen in church, but gather with the community in Christ. And the third thing he did was he had that great line. First 4 verses, Sam Ballard sends them this thing. We want you to come and so we can talk to you tonight. We want you to come so we can confer with you. We want you to come. Now Nehemiah didn't know that. His real intention was to get them to come and meet him so they could probably kill him and dispose of him and not deal with his opposition anymore to their plans. But he doesn't know that, and maybe he sees this invitation as a good opportunity. If I go talk to them, if I go meet with them, maybe we can start working out our differences. So when the wall gets built, we can create a better regional ministry or do something really cool that we can all work on together. He didn't know that the real plan was to get them so they could kill him. But I love what he said. He was not willing to sacrifice the great calling for the possible good opportunity. And what did he say? I am doing a great work. And I can't come down. Now, the next time you feel distracted, right? The next time in your life you feel like something's undermining this overcoming of your challenges, the next time you feel like someone's trying to drag you back, at least in your brain, if not out loud, try that. I'm doing a great work. And I can't come down there right now. Have you ever tried that? At least in your heart. Because this is my anti-stress kit. This was given to me by Laura about 6 months ago. And I have a bandit on my forehead, but that's not why. But I thought it was pretty cool. Because I look at that and like you, I have stress in ministry and my fists clam up, my blood pressure probably goes up and I feel like I want to bang my head on the wall. Not out of anger at anybody, just because stress. But there's something else in my office. Next slide, please. Right by the anti-stress kit are these 2 pictures from children in our church who gave this to me at different points. And I look at those pictures, and my gaze turns from the good opportunity to the great calling that we're a part of. Shaping young hearts and minds in the image of Jesus. What? How cool is that? And isn't that more important? That's what Nehemiah did. He was able to say, he had the good opportunity of whatever that means. I would love to do that, but I am not turning my heart away from the great calling before you and before me and before myself. And so when I get that stress, I look at those other 2 and I go, you know what? I'll take that. Knowing that some hearts and minds are being shaped by this great, amazing call that we are all a part of, by the way. Let us pray. Holy God, man, we are human. Boy, are we human. And sometimes we feel like Nehemiah, and other times we may feel more like Sam Ballard. And what I love about you is you love us wherever we are, whether we're Nehemiah or Sam Ballard or someplace in between. You love us, but you love us enough not to leave us there. To move in your spirit, to move with your mercy and your forgiveness, and your grace and your truth. Help us as your people, wherever we are in that journey, to make the choice to not sacrifice the great for just the good. To let prayer with our children be a part of our journey. To let community of faith be a part of our journey. Even though we may have just stepped in here for the first or second time or the first time in a long time to say there's something in a gathered community that makes a difference. And most of all, be able to say when we're confronted by distractions that seek to undermine our growth to say, I am doing a great work. And God has called me to it. I just can't come down there now. All God's people said. Amen.